Yellowstone National Park is home to one of the largest supervolcanoes on Earth, and now it appears that this magma chamber is expanding once again. Just like last year, in July 2024, scientists detected new earthquake swarms happening under the park. These new earthquakes are similar to those that occurred before the big eruption in 640,000 BC, which completely reshaped the northern part of the Rocky Mountains. Now, we don't need to worry about another eruption like this happening anytime soon, but there is a chance that this supervolcano could erupt much earlier than expected. So today, let's take a look at some of the latest updates from the end of 2023 and the start of 2024. We'll try to figure out if we should be worried about another super eruption or not. Just like any other volcano, Yellowstone has quiet periods where nothing happens, and active periods where earthquakes swarm, steam, vents and geysers erupt, and the ground bulges upwards. The quiet periods can go on for hundreds or even thousands of years, but they usually end with an increase in earthquake activity. At first, these earthquakes are fairly small, but then the intensity increases until suddenly there's a really big magma eruption. This is what happened in 1985, when more than 3,000 earthquakes hit the area in just 3 months. In total, the earthquakes released around 20 million pounds of energy. All of this was caused by the movement of magma underneath the park. Eventually, the pressure was so high that the magma broke through and caused the largest eruption since the 19th century. Lava fountains shot over 350 feet into the air and created new cones and lava lakes. And although this was only a small eruption compared to others, it was still pretty scary for the people living nearby. Even though no one was injured or killed, the park had to be evacuated, and all of the research equipment that hadn't been moved was destroyed. In 2022, Yellowstone showed some signs of unrest. There were seismic swarms and the ground started bulging up and tilting, but luckily, everything went back to normal after a few months. However, at the end of 2023, the earthquakes came back. At first, the swarm didn't seem too important because they were very small quakes, but as time went on, more and more earthquakes started to hit. By the end of December, there were over 1,000 earthquakes that had hit in just a few weeks. Luckily, all of them were pretty weak and didn't really affect anything. But scientists did notice something strange. Most of the earthquakes were happening in a place that hadn't seen any earthquake activity for many years. What's really interesting is that this is also the place where magma is gathering underneath the volcano. Scientists know this because they have instruments called GPS stations. They use these stations to measure how the ground moves. And ever since the mid-1990s, they've noticed that this area has been rising at a steady rate. It's risen about 17 centimeters in total. So why is the ground moving? Well, it's most likely due to magma pushing its way upwards. The magma is coming from deep within the Earth. It starts in a place called the deep mantle, which is between 180 and 310 miles below the surface. Don't ask me how they know this because I have no idea. Then this hot liquid rock slowly makes its way upwards over millions of years. It doesn't move very fast because the rocks around it are very strong and it takes hundreds of thousands of years to get anywhere near the surface. Once the magma reaches this point, it starts to move faster. It goes from being cold and rigid to hot and gooey. This allows it to squirm and twist through the rocks above. As it moves up, it creates fractures and faults, and these are the places where most of the earthquakes happen. But obviously, 17 centimeters is nothing to worry about, right? Well, not yet. You see, this uplift isn't happening evenly across the board. Some places are rising faster than others, and that means that the magma isn't all in one place. Instead, it's starting to spread out. It might seem like a good thing because it means that there won't be a large magma buildup, and therefore won't explode. However, it does mean that we could have a series of eruptions instead, so in some ways it's actually worse. At the moment, scientists aren't sure what will happen. Some of them think that it's just normal unrest and nothing will happen for a while. Others believe that we could see an eruption in the next few years. But regardless of what happens, it's clear that we are in an active period. That means that we should expect more earthquakes, more steam and gas emissions, and more changes in the landscape. So although we shouldn't be too worried, we should definitely be paying attention. Scientists have known about the magma chamber underneath Yellowstone for decades, but they haven't been able to image it directly because it's far too dangerous. And let's face it, drilling holes in active volcanoes sounds like a great way to cause an eruption. But recently, scientists may have found a way to see inside without going anywhere near it. Scientists from Oregon State University have developed a device that uses waves to take pictures of things that are inside the Earth. They call it the Seismic Refraction Tomography System, or SIRT. Here's how it works. You see, when sound travels through a medium, it changes speed depending on what it passes through. For example, if someone were to shout on a beach, the sound would travel quite fast through the air. But when it hits the water, the sound waves would slow down. And that's why you can hear people talking, even if you're underwater. The sound waves change speed when they pass from one medium to another, and scientists can use this principle to find out what the Earth is made of. They just need to send waves through the Earth and measure how fast they move. By doing this, they can create maps of the underground similar to ultrasound machines that doctors use to take pictures of babies. The difference is that these scientists are trying to picture magma chambers. Now, to do this, they have to create seismic waves, and they do this by dropping weights on the ground. Sounds simple, right? Well, yes it is. They drop the weights on the ground and then listen to how the waves bounce back, and from this they can create a map of the area underneath. But there is a problem. It doesn't work very well when there's a lot of noise. You see, in places like Oregon, there's always background noise like cars, trains, wind, and people talking. And this noise can interfere with the recordings. So these scientists traveled to a remote area of Wyoming and conducted their experiments in the middle of the night to reduce background noise. Their results were incredible. They were able to image the magma chamber 4 miles beneath the surface. They found that the magma chamber was roughly oval-shaped and stretched for around 3 miles in each direction. They also discovered that there were layers of solid rock in the middle of the liquid magma. Scientists don't know exactly what these are, but they think that they're fragments of rock that have crystallized as the magma cooled. Either way, this is an amazing discovery because it tells us that this technology may be able to help us understand other volcanoes without putting ourselves in danger. So what do we need to keep an eye on? Well, the first thing is how often earthquakes hit. If there are lots of earthquakes happening every day, then it's probably a sign that the magma chamber is getting full and it could erupt soon. The second thing we should be looking at is the rate that the land is rising. Right now, it's rising at around 2 centimeters per year. But if it starts to rise faster, then it's a bad sign. Also, scientists will be keeping an eye on steam and gas emissions. If there's an increase in these, then it means that the magma is getting closer to the surface and could erupt soon. I guess it makes sense. When magma is deep inside the Earth, it's under a lot of pressure. This pressure stops gases from escaping, but when the pressure is released, the gases escape and become steam and sometimes sulfur dioxide. And finally, we will also be looking at the patterns of the earthquakes. Right now, the earthquakes are fairly evenly spaced, but if the pattern becomes clustered in one place, then it's a sign that the magma is breaking through the crust and we should evacuate immediately. Luckily, this hasn't happened yet, but scientists are still monitoring the situation closely. But what if the worst-case scenario does happen? Well, thankfully, there's a plan in place to deal with it. The Yellowstone supervolcano is monitored 24 hours a day by the United States Geological Survey. They keep track of earthquake activity, gas emissions, and any other changes that might happen. And if there's ever a big eruption, they have a team of experts ready to go. It's called the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory. Their job is to study the eruption and make sure that everyone is safe. Obviously, the biggest danger would be from falling ash. So they would set up air quality monitors to measure the amount of ash in the air. They would also work with local officials to make sure that people are evacuated from the area. Another danger would be pyroclastic flows. These are hot mixtures of gas and rock that flow down the side of the volcano. Pyroclastic flows are really hot and can travel at over 100 miles per hour, so if there was a big eruption, the team would work hard to make sure that everyone is aware of the danger and that they evacuate quickly. And then lastly, there would be lahars. Lahars are volcanic mud flows that can travel down rivers and streams. They're usually triggered by heavy rainfall or melting snow and ice. Lahars can be really dangerous because they can travel far away from the volcano and they can carry a lot of debris with them. The team would work with local officials to monitor rivers and streams and make sure that people are evacuated if necessary. Overall, the chances of anyone being harmed by an eruption are slim to none. The last major eruption happened 640,000 years ago, and even then it didn't kill many animals or people. In fact, scientists estimate that only about 10% of the North American forests were affected by the eruption. So don't worry too much. Keep an eye on the news, but at the end of the day we probably don't need to be worried.